So why is there a Tom in TomTag? Clare explains the reason why.
So TomTag is a visual support system which, when it's used well, can really bring about positive changes for those people that we love and care for. So what do I mean by visual support? Well, it's a broad term and it can mean objects, pictures or written words that help us understand what's happening next and also to help us communicate with others. Many of us use visual supports. We think of your calendar or a recipe or a shopping list. They're all types of visual support to help us organise ourselves. So TomTag uses pictures to communicate with children who have difficulty understanding or using language. And this helps parents communicate with a child, and it also helps the child communicate better with others. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story and how important visual supports have been in my family's life, and to explain to you why there's a Tom in TomTag. So my story starts with my son Thomas. Thomas was born in 2000 in Switzerland, which is where I was living. I moved out there in 1998 with my husband. Prior to that, I was a solicitor working in London, so it's quite a change. Even though Switzerland's a beautiful country, I don't know if any of you have been. It was quite difficult being in a foreign country away from family and friends with a new baby, and it was at times quite a lonely experience. But I loved being a full-time mum, and I felt very privileged that I had the time to spend with Thomas. However, as we approached Thomas's second birthday, it became increasingly clear that there were some things not quite right with his behaviour and his development. As he approached 2, his early attempts at speech disappeared. There was no sort of imaginary play or any interest in children at all, no eye contact, and intense anxiety when anything unexpected happened. He used to cry a lot, have meltdowns, run away. And then when the arrival of Hannah, his baby sister, he went into what I call the lockdown period. He just was not interested in anything. He just lay on the floor and pushed a piece of railway track up and down in front of his face. So you can imagine it was quite a stressful time. I was on my own in the house, obviously with Thomas, who I didn't know what was happening with him. I had a new baby, and my husband was away often on long business trips. I started to Google to see if I could find out why Thomas was behaving as he did, like you do. And I remember stumbling upon a checklist of behaviours, and it was like reading about my daily life. It was like there's a video camera in the house, and that checklist was for autism. It wasn't really viable for me to come back to the UK to get assessments, so I really had to sort of pull my sleeves up, get my big girl pants on and try and navigate the Swiss system. So my German certainly improved, which every cloud I suppose. But despite his lack of interest in anything, Thomas at this time, I did notice he was picking up cues from his environment. So for example, if I got my coat or if I got the shopping bags, he got really upset. If I got the biscuit barrel out, he got really excited, but then we all get excited at the appearance of a biscuit barrel. So I started to use these objects to represent different activities during the day, just so he was reassured about what we were going to do. I didn't realise it, but at that time, Thomas and I were at the start of our visual support journey, because what you usually do with children with little language is you do start with sort of object supports. So building on these object supports, I made some simple laminated picture cards, just to allow him some choices for things that mattered to him, things to drink, things to eat. I just made 2 or 3 so as not to overwhelm him. I mean, I think life would be a lot easier sometimes if we just had 2 or 3 choices, wouldn't it? And giving him a choice, I gave him a voice, and this had a really positive effect on his behaviour. There were less meltdowns, and he appeared much calmer because he knew what was happening during his day. So it took about 18 months of pushing for Thomas to finally get diagnosed with autism, age 4. And he got diagnosed with autism, a severe language disorder and sensory processing issues, which is quite a bag of things. And he was diagnosed by the rather wonderfully named Dr. Gundelfinger in Zurich. Sounds a bit like a Bond villain, doesn't he? The report was written in German, and I was told Thomas would probably never go to school, never speak, never live independently, and worst of all, that maybe I should think about putting him in a residential home. So it's pretty heartbreaking and devastating news in whatever language, really, because suddenly All those milestones you take for granted, going to school, making friends, having a partner, living independently, they're taken away, and it's like a bereavement, which I'm sure many of you can perhaps relate to if you've been in similar positions. But for me, the diagnosis, it was a catalyst, because I thought, right, I'm determined to ensure Thomas is going to get every opportunity to fill his potential, whatever that may be. And in fact, after his diagnosis, we were invited to take part in a study in Switzerland. It was for ABA, Applied Behavioural Analysis, which is quite a scientific behavioural way of teaching skills. We were the first, actually it was the first study of its kind in Switzerland. So we were very sort of lucky to get involved in that. I was using the picture cards increasingly during this time, but when the ABA programme started and developed, I was making hundreds of these cards, using photographs, drawings, clip art sorts of things, because these cards were used in the ABA programme to help Thomas to teach him language and abstract concepts such as emotions. Because remember, this was kind of pre-iPad days, 2004, 2005. Thomas gained language as the ABA programme developed. He said his first words when he was about 5, which was magical. And I started to use picture supports more and more to show him what to expect at birthdays, appointments. I created holiday diaries to encourage conversations with him. And I also made lots of activity cards to show his day-to-day schedules. So as you can see, visual supports played a huge role in Thomas's life from a young age. And I spent so many hours, so many nights making these resources, researching pictures, laminating, printing them. And in fact, it was during one of these late night sessions that I came across the idea of a colour-coded school bag packing checklist. It was a list that can attach to a school bag to help a child remember what to take to school every day, and also equally important, what to bring home again. At that time, I was doing an online course for Dyslexia Action, again to help Thomas, and I was also working at the international school where Thomas was attending for a couple of hours each week. And so I designed the checklist for Thomas and also for the dyslexic student I was working with at that time to help them get more organised. Because I know getting ready for school, it's an organisational, it requires a lot of organisational skills for any child, doesn't it? And particularly for a child with special educational needs like Thomas and the dyslexic student I was working with. It can be a very, very stressful time in the morning, can't it? Trying to remember everything to pack and get out the door on time. And that's just for us parents, isn't it? I'm sure we sort of maybe have fond memories of that now in these pre-COVID, in these COVID times. But hopefully we'll get back to that normal times sooner rather than later. So made these bag tags using clip art, very basic, but the student I was supporting and Thomas really benefited from them. And I made some for my friend Deborah, who was living in Switzerland at the time as well, with her husband, and she loved the independence it gave to her children as well. Funnily enough, even though Deborah and I live on either side of the Pennines, we actually met in Switzerland for the first time. Deborah then came back to the UK in 2008, and then following the breakdown of my marriage in 2010, I came back to the UK as well to be near my family. So we're kind of back again either side of the Pennines. Because of the positive comments we'd received from many parents about the basic bag tag, Deborah and I decided that we'd turn the bag tag into a product that would help other people, to a visual product that'd help other children, just like it had helped Thomas. And I decided to call it TomTag, obviously because Thomas was the inspiration. So that's the story behind TomTag.